The Treasury has failed South Africans, and Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan should be redeployed according to the ANC Youth League. It wants the Treasury's powers to be restricted following the Competition Commission's decision to prosecute banks implicated in price fixing and collusion. In studio now with us is Secretary General of the ANC Youth League, Njabulo Nzuza. Thank you so much for coming in to speak to us this afternoon, Njabulo. Let's start off with this issue of Pravin Gordhan, your request that he be redeployed. Why do you want to see him go?
Well, we've said that we wanted someone who has more appetite to actually collapse the defenses that banks and private capital, majority which is white, has established with the National Treasury. What we have seen on a number of situations is Treasury that protects banks who are on the wrong. Look at the issue of the apartheid debt and what they were given as ABSA. Treasury continued to defend them even when reports came in. Right now you have a situation wherein banks have colluded. Remember, we raised this issue last year, but the Treasury did not act on the call that we made. It was the Competition Commission that acted on such. So there is really appetite to protect banks who have done wrong. So we are saying the whole administration and management structure of Treasury must change, and that must start with the captain at the helm, who must be redeployed by the ANC.
Where do you want to see him go?
Well, we do not have a place for him to go. Ultimate deployment is handled by the African National Congress. All that we are saying is that he must be redeployed. Obviously, not in Treasury, because there are other issues, even with the license of the State Bank, that should have been issued as a directive of the ANC. Till today, the Post Bank does not have a license. You know, the issue of the PPFA, that must be repealed. Even now, that has not happened. So there are quite a number of issues that we are raising. But this one of banks really proves of a Treasury that is protecting interest of white monopoly capital.
You know, it's very interesting that you speak about white monopoly capital with specific regard to the banks. It's interesting that all of these issues about Bank Corp, these issues that you're raising now about the issue of alleged collusion within the 17 banks that have been implicated. It's interesting that all of this comes up after the Gupta bank accounts were closed. Are you an instrument of the Guptas trying to get the banks investigated or undermined or perhaps sabotaged in order to support the Gupta campaign?
We have told people for quite a long time that we have no relations with the Guptas. You can go to the accounts of the Youth League. We have not received anything or form of payment from the Guptas.
Our agenda has had no relations with the Guptas.
Yes, we have said it even in these studios before, that there is no relationship with the Guptas. All that we want to see is justice being done. The problem starts when every corner, when you make a call on something legitimate, it is then Guptatized, as if it is about the Guptas. No. For once, you must remember that we are a youth organization, and our agenda is to pursue the interest of young people, and that interest of young people is compromised when banks and financial institutions do wrong. For once, people must learn to take responsibility for what they have done. They can't do wrong and then say there is an agenda.
Let's stop you right there. There's an investigation underway. The Competition Commission began it. It's been handed over to the Competition Tribunal right now. It's a very complex issue, but it is all being investigated, as is the Bank Corp issue by the Public Protector. You're implying here that people have been found guilty and you're acting as judge and jury, aren't you, in these issues regarding the banks?
We are not judges and juries. There are reports that have been issued, and those reports point to collusion. And we are saying further investigations must be done. But already, as we look into the matter, we can see that there is a problem. Remember, I must tell you that we have been doing our own work in this particular regard. That is why we raised the issue last year, and people made it to be a laughing stock. Again, we were told this is a complex issue, forgetting that we actually do have minds that we apply ourselves. We are quite intelligent people in the ANC Youth League. We look into issues, and we have looked into this issue, and we see what we see. Banks that collude. Even last year, when we said banks have colluded to drop the rand to such record levels of almost 18 rand to the dollar, we were told no, these people don't understand this issue. But now our assertions are slowly being proven to be true, and ultimately they will have to pay.
It's very interesting indeed that you say that, because the experts who are grappling with this right now, who work in the banking sector, believe that this is such a complex issue, it may even in terms of jurisdiction be very difficult to prove. You maintain
that is the problem. The problem is that you are quoting the very same experts who are employed by the very same banks who have interest to save those banks. So they will never tell you anything different. Right. The problem is that when it's government,
those experts who are
the problem is that when it's government, it's corruption. When it's banks, it's collusion. Experts are brought in to try and clear banks. We won't accept that.
Let me just move on to this issue of Treasury being restructured. What do you see happening? How do you envisage its restructuring?
Its restructuring must start from the top. Let us get Pravin redeployed somewhere. Let us look in terms of the DG and his oversight of Treasury and deliverables that they have not done. But I am not... You know exactly, the only person who has powers to replace Pravin is the President.
No, but who would you like to see as new Finance Minister if Pravin Gordhan is moved?
We do not have a name. We are not going to give President a name. We will allow the President and the ANC, because he does it in consultation with the officials, to look into the matter, get us an appropriate person. What we want to see is a person with appetite, and I repeat, appetite, who is willing to go in there and dismantle and make sure that those who have been protecting banks and protecting white capital ship out of Treasury, whatever it takes, so that we can start to have...
someone like Brian Molefe in that post?
Are you putting the weight of Brian Molefe to me?
I'm asking, are you interested in having someone like Brian Molefe in that post? His name has been touted as a possibility in the future.
We are not going to do a job that is supposed to be done by the President and the officials of suggesting a name. And I'm not going to sit here and have a name thrown to me and I react on that particular name, because there is an organizational process that must ensue. And we are saying such must happen. All that we want is a person who's going to be having a willingness to change Treasury.
You know that perhaps this has reached your ears already. Parliament nominating Brian Molefe to fill a vacancy on the Northwest list of ANC members in Parliament, which they say is depleted. So they'll determine a date for swearing him in as a member of Parliament. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's part of a deployment strategy of the organization. If the organization deploys Brian Molefe and the person is capable to do whatever the organization seeks for him to do in Parliament, yes, we accept that. And we don't have any problem with Brian Molefe.
You're comfortable that after he was implicated in the Saxonwold issue in the Public Protector's report, that with regard to the Guptas, that it's fine to swear him in?
That's the problem with double standards. ANCYL, they must be investigated and found guilty. After then, can we then talk about them? But Brian Molefe must now be acted upon on rumours and something that has not been finalized.
About Brian Molefe being implicated in the Gupta report, but still being sworn in as a member of Parliament?
There has never been a conclusive report that has been issued on the issue of Brian Molefe. Unlike ANCYL, you've got reports that were commissioned by the Reserve Bank which pointed to this issue. So those are two different issues.
Yes,
and we've been saying that we are drawing. That is why we are saying we are drawing.
This is a question put to you.
Because double standards.
About Brian Molefe.
When you check double.
How do you feel about Brian Molefe being sworn in as a member of Parliament, given this shadow hanging over him?
We have said we don't have a problem with the cadre of the organization if he has been deployed. You are correctly saying it is a shadow that is just looming. There's nothing substantial that have been proven against Brian Molefe. There are conditions for a person to become a member of Parliament, such he must not have been found guilty of any criminality, and as such the person meets the requirement. Why do we want to create more requirements in terms of requirements that are there? But when you test double standards, you must test them on two different comparative situations. And here I'm saying this is where news and the media starts to have double standards. ANCYL and their criminality must not be made decision upon on the basis he sees that there are no conclusive reports, where on Brian Molefe then there must be a shade hanging over his head. No, we are very conscious that on ABSA we are using the report that was actually prepared by the Reserve Bank and issued that actually pointed to ABSA. And we are not just using the public...
The Public Protector's report that mentions Brian Molefe and his numerous visits to Saxonwold, you don't think that there's any weight to be held by that report? You don't think there's anything in that report that suggests Brian Molefe should perhaps not be sworn into Parliament at this point until that matter is cleared up?
Again, we will let the financial sector get away with billions and we focus on Brian Molefe. I've already said it, I'm going to say it, I think now for the fourth time. Brian Molefe has not been found guilty by any court of law. As a result, he can go to Parliament. If the organization sees that there is a need for him to go to Parliament and address a certain shortfall in advancing the agenda of the organization, that is fine with us.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us today. ANC Youth League's Njabulo Nzuza.